Welcome back, everyone. This is The Nerdy Truth, where we highlight citizen innovation to help inspire and build our country for the future. I'm your host, Dr. JJ Walcutt, and today is our first episode transitioning from the campaign to action. What do we mean by that? Well, for those of you that have been following me for a while, pause for just a moment while I fill everyone in. I am a scientist and a former government worker. I reported to the Pentagon in my last position. I was the Director of Innovation for an education and training program, and a U.S. delegate to NATO, Partnership for Peace. And my job, or one of my jobs, was to actually redesign the executive branch. We were looking for great ideas within government and trying to determine how we could better use them for the American people. What I found blew me away. Our problem is not at the government worker level. Those individuals, numbering well over multiple millions, for those of you who are unaware, are exceptional. They're brilliant, they're hardworking, they're dedicated to this country. There's a reason we call them civil servants to our people. But the political space was daunting and exceptional and kept a lot of good work from happening. So I decided to leave my position and to tour the country as a presidential candidate. We toured all 50 states, talking to citizens everywhere from every walk of life. We looked at education, healthcare. We looked at defense and also at the economy and how we really bring a human feeling and idea to all of these pieces. The environment was one of our biggest focuses, recognizing that without Earth, nothing else matters. And at the end, I started to have to question, what is it that I found? I mean, obviously, I had little belief that we were going to have a Cinderella story and become president of the United States. But I think the exercise was telling, and the information that we gathered was truly exceptional. Most recently, I got to have a discussion with General James Mattis, former Secretary of Defense, and we talked about my journey and about his journey. This is a man who has seen people from all over our nation, has worked at every level, but who also has perspective both in time and distance. He's traveled all over the world. And I was really blown away by the discussion that we had and what we could learn from each other and from those around us. And the punchline kind of went something like this. We are struggling in our country right now in leadership spaces, whether that's in politics, religion, academia, you name it. Disagreement is profound, and it's not particularly productive right now. So it begs the question, where does leadership come from? It asks the question, who in our country is going to step up? And I'll tell you the answer that I came up with and the conclusion that I draw based on the tour that we just finished. And it's our citizens. I found exceptional people everywhere I went. There are folks in Nebraska that told me stories about how when the floods come, they all come together and their town helps one another, whether that's with business or food or education or whatever they need. I met people in Kentucky who take it upon themselves to ensure that every vet in their area has what they need when they need it. I met individuals in California who had exceptional military backgrounds and said, and I quote, "We're not investing in innovation and in science and in planning like we used to. And because of that, we're going to be surprised. America is going to be surprised." And look where we are today. We've been hit by a terrible pandemic, and our country is very much struggling to determine what information is true, what information tells us how to make decisions, and most importantly, and the part that I'm focused on, where do we go from here? How do we take everything that we've learned in this campaign over the last year, bring it together, and start taking action? We can't assume that somebody's going to fly in and tell us what we're going to do. We're now in what we call a distributed situation. Everybody has their own space. Everybody has to monitor their own health. Everybody has to figure out how we're going to be able to make money and how we're going to be able to keep our jobs in this different space. And the biggest question on many people's minds is, what's next? I personally have been through a significant amount of healthcare issues. I have an autoimmune disease and have spent a lot of time in intensive care because of it. Ironically, given the situation we're in, what I have attacks my lungs, and I end up with severe inflammation, which then leads to a lot of fluid buildup and eventually moves through all my organs. I was 17 the first time a doctor said we didn't think you would survive the night. And that's a profound change. That is a moment in life where you start to wonder what is going to happen tomorrow and what is going to happen the next day. It's scary. I had to change so much of my life to ensure that I could survive, that I could handle what was happening in my body, that I could predict if it was going to come again, that I could make sure I always had medication on me. Several years later, I had a child and he needed open heart surgery. And once again, I found myself in a position where I'm back in the ICU. I'm back fighting the doctors. I'm back asking questions that at 22, I did not expect to be asking. My son had no chambers or valves in his heart and went through severe, very serious 6-hour surgery. And the doctors told me he will never be able to participate in sports. He will probably need a heart transplant. You know, at 5 years old, that young man asked me if he was going to die from his heart condition. And I had to tell him the truth. I said, yes, you probably will. Not being being a first-time mom at that time, I should have told him we should get in the car first where we had air conditioning, because being in Florida and almost 100 degrees outside, we were a little hot for my 5-year-old to decide what he was going to do about that news. But we stood there because I said, you have a choice now. You can choose to be upset about this, or you can choose to live. And he really did stand there until he figured out what he was going to do. And he said, Mommy, I'm going to live. And I know at 5 he couldn't have understood all of that. But you know what? That kid is 21 years old now. And he is a marathon runner. So I think he took that challenge and ran with it. But what I didn't know is this wouldn't be the end of my time in hospitals. My third daughter, Sarah, passed away at birth. And because she was a twin, and we were still 48 hours from the time of viability, they would not resuscitate her. But I had a fourth child that now I had to fight for. Little Madison was still within me and still had a chance, but the doctor said there's a 0.01% chance that I could deliver naturally more than 48 hours later. I said, well, that's not zero. So I'll take that challenge. And I made a deal with the doctor that if I could make the impossible happen, or near impossible as he says, that they would do me the favor of letting me take her to the NICU, run tests, and make an informed decision. I made it 52 hours. And little Madison came out just barely at 23 weeks. And as was predicted, she had a number of problems, multiple surgeries. She ruptured her intestines. We spent 17 weeks on a ventilator. For those of you who've never seen a child on a ventilator, especially one that weighs less than a pound, let me tell you, it is quite an experience. I didn't see her face for 3 months because there was so much tape over the top of it. At 4 weeks, a baby is considered to have something called bronchopulmonary dysplasia, or BPD, most easily referred to as chronic lung disease. It means that the lungs are so damaged that they can't produce enough healthy tissue to survive. This happens at 4 weeks. At 17 weeks, Madison was still fighting. On this day, the doctors came in and said, we're going to trach her. That means they're going to put a permanent ventilator in through her throat. The risk of death is extremely high in these scenarios, and so we tried to avoid it at all cost. I said, let's keep thinking. Let's keep looking at what the data tells us. And we looked and searched and talked to scientists and everyone in between, came up with a behavioral protocol, worked with the medications. And over 48 hours, we got that child extubated and onto the lowest flow cannula on just a whiff of oxygen. But wouldn't you know, a week later, she would end up back in surgery, back intubated. And the doctors had no hope that she could make it through. But Madison had a different plan. And now at 8 years old, she absolutely does not remember having even been on the ventilator. My point in my stories is to say, I know what it's like to be sick. I know what it's like to be scared. I know what it's like specifically to have lung issues, to deal with ventilators, to understand intubation and extubation and all the challenges that come with it, what it does to the lungs long term, and what all of these medications mean. But I know something different as well. And that is what happens once you get through this period. If I hadn't watched my son go through what he did and see him come out and be successful and able to do anything he wanted, I probably wouldn't have been prepared for Madison. But when I knew that we just needed to get her through that hospital time and we just needed to get past that first run of illness and struggles, that we could build her up after that, that we could have success in the future, my motivation to stay strong, my motivation to keep thinking forward was increased tenfold. And as I look at this virus and feel as though we are all in this together, we as Americans are standing bedside to the thousands of people that are fighting right now. And we are asking ourselves, what is going to happen to them? What is going to happen to ourselves? And how are we going to build an economy coming out of this that is going to bring back the money and the jobs to the people that are having to be furloughed right now? How is it that we are going to learn from this experience and move forward so that we are better prepared for the future? Who is it that is going to step up and start leading this country in a way that we have not needed for over 100 years? And the answer for me comes right back to what I found on the campaign trail and that discussion that I had with General Mattis. It's not going to be a single person. It's not going to be a single discipline. It's going to be every single one of us. It is difficult to jump into politics and to recognize that so much of it is an ugly space. So much of it is about money. So much of it is about power. But the truth and the reality and the heart that I found around this country, that is worth fighting for. That is where we find brilliance. That is where we find the innovation that will inspire all of us to build this country and to move into the next century. There's a lot that we can learn during this time, and I borrow from our friends in the Nordic regions. You know, when I served at NATO, I found it very interesting that we move at a pace that you just can't even imagine, right? We're constantly planning. We're constantly thinking forward. I mean, this is about the defense of our country and about the stability of our world. And then we get to August and we can't email or contact our Nordic friends. And a lot of us said, what? When we're new to it, we aren't used to the concept of countries taking a month off. But countries do sometimes. And when everybody is in it together, when everybody knows that that time is coming, it operates very differently. We are now in a space where we are all taking time together to be at home. We are opening our homes to our colleagues. We are seeing people who I have only seen in suits, now in t-shirts after runs. We are seeing our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors as humans. And that is changing the way we look at everything. So now we need to take all of that energy and use it to press forward. Now we need to bring these stories to each and every one of you. Now we need to bring these ideas and harness the innovation that is so amazing in our country and use it as a leverage and a catapult into the future. So I hope you will join me. We will be doing weekly podcasts and YouTube channel discussions with citizen innovators all over our country, from every state and from every walk of life and from every perspective. This isn't about taking a side, and this is about joining together as Americans and recognizing we have an opportunity. Now let's build on it. This is The Nerdy Truth, and I'm your host, Dr. J.J. Walcutt.